The transfer portal is opening, and the Hawkeyes are going to be shopping, including, it looks like, at quarterback. We'll get into that. Scott Dochterman joins us, and plenty of football talk with Kaleb Johnson off to the NFL. A busy Locked On Hawkeyes.
You are Locked On Hawkeyes, your daily podcast on the Iowa Hawkeyes. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey, welcome in. I'm Trent, Condon, and this is the Locked On Hawkeyes podcast. Thanks for making Locked On Hawkeyes your first listen every day. We're available wherever you find podcasts. You can also watch us on YouTube. While you're there, make sure you hit the subscribe button. Helps us get in front of more Hawkeye fans. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. We got a Monster Hoops game tonight for the Iowa basketball team as the men get ready to take on Northwestern. Big Ten opener. Iowa has struggled mightily in these games in the Fran McCaffrey era, and it is incredibly important for Iowa to get off to a good start and find a way to get to a win. We'll talk about that game coming up here. Scott Dochterman from The Athletic, will join us. We'll talk with Doc about everything going on in the world of the Hawkeyes, and I'll look back at the win against Nebraska over the weekend on Black Friday. But we start today with the news of both the roster current and what the roster is going to look at next season as the portal is opening. So we are less than a week away from the transfer portal officially opening up. Iowa looks to be heavily involved. All the graduating seniors, 23 guys that are going to be moving on, coupled with the change and the way things are going to look in the structure of a football roster. If you've been asleep, it will start next season that there will be 105 scholarships available. You say, well, that sounds great. That's 20 more scholarships. Not so fast. Because of that 105 scholarship limit, the walk-on program as we know it is going to look a whole lot different. And that is something that is not good for Iowa in general. We know about the success of the walk-on program and what it's meant really being a lifeblood component to this one. But that's a conversation for another day. The portal, getting into that. And we start the conversation today with Miller Moss, the USC quarterback who made his intentions about a month ago that he was going to be entering the portal. Most people assumed that he was going to be in it, and now he officially is. As someone that has already graduated, though the portal is not open until December 9th, he is able to talk with teams. We don't have to worry about any chicanery happening there. And when his name first came up 3-4 weeks ago, I brought Moss up and wondering if Iowa, would be interested in somebody like him, and coupled with, would Iowa have the finances to make it happen? Now, that is what we don't know, what a Miller Moss is going to get in the transfer portal, what kind of money we're talking about here. He's a guy that is more of a pocket passer, 18 touchdowns, 9 interceptions this past season, had a monster bowl game a year ago, and then Lincoln Riley moved on, went with Moava, the younger guy, as our season was going to a disappointing end to the season. You can go a multitude of different ways. He said he's looking for somebody that can develop him for the next level. And you say, well, Iowa developing quarterbacks for the next level. This isn't little old Iowa that we thought of in the past with an inept offensive coordinator, a quarterback coach that didn't know quarterbacks in the previous regime. Now you have Tim Lester in there. The success that he showed this year, what he was able to do in fixing the run game. Now next, fix the passing game. And he can do it with a quarterback like Miller Moss. The tutelage that he got under Lincoln Riley, I think, is only helpful. And we'll see. Iowa is involved with Michigan, Louisville, Auburn. Those are the 4 teams that are initially talked about here. Iowa needs to upgrade at the quarterback position. There is no doubt about it. Iowa needs to be better. I don't believe you can go into the season next year with Jackson Stratton and Brendan Sullivan and feel like those guys are going to be big enough difference makers to get this team even fighting for bowl eligibility. We've talked in the past how difficult next year's schedule is and how difficult it's going to be for the Hawkeyes to put together another solid season. Even 8-win season, I think, is going to be incredibly difficult next year. You're talking about a home slate that includes Oregon, Penn State. Oh, by the way, those 2 teams are playing for the Big Ten championship. Minnesota comes to town. We know that's always a close game. Michigan State, a team that beat the Hawkeyes this year. Oh, and Indiana, another team that's going to be in the college football playoff. Those are your home Big Ten games. That's when you usually make your hay. Then you go on the road to Wisconsin, Will they be improved offensively next year? It's going to be a huge season for Luke Fickell. You go to USC next year, you go to Rutgers, and you go to Nebraska to wrap up the season. Oh, by the way, in the non-conference, you're also going to Iowa State. That's playing for a bid in the college football playoff themselves this weekend. That is the slate in front of them. I don't believe that the team, with what they're losing and the way the roster sits right now, is going to be good enough to even get to 6 wins with that schedule next year with the two quarterbacks that they currently have that at least have some kind of experience in Stratton and in Brendan Sullivan. I think Sullivan's a nice piece. I think he's a great backup to have. And if Jackson Stratton is your third teamer, okay. But you need an upgrade there. You need a difference maker at the quarterback position. And you need to be able to see Kim Tim Lester get this thing fixed with the right kind of talent at the quarterback spot. It never worked for Cade McNamara. It was a disappointing end, obviously, to his career. And maybe that concerns you. Maybe that concerns you because of the way that this one went. Do we really need to go portal shopping once again because it went so poorly with Cade McNamara? Don't take that loser mentality. Here's another thing that I've heard. Well, Kirk never gets in the portal. What are you talking about? 2 years ago, it wasn't just Cade McNamara was the only guy that they went out in the transfer portal and got that year. They were heavily involved a season ago. They brought in not just Cade McNamara, Eric Gall, pretty good before the injury, huh? Rusty Feth, who became a starter for them, Nick Jackson. They went out and got Kaleb Brown. That was an eye opener, even if it didn't work. Deacon Hill, okay. Seth Anderson, that was a big coup for Iowa. Iowa beat some ACC programs for Seth Anderson. We'll see if he can finally put together a healthy season, what he can do at the wide receiver position. Dejon Parker. Now, Parker never played, but that was another one. Iowa has been involved before. They brought in, 9 players that season, and they're going to have to do the same this year. Are they going to get the top end talent? Do they have the finances to do that? Probably not. Also, remember, though, and we go back to that period 2 years ago with Iowa. And one of the things that many of these guys talked about, it wasn't just about the finances. These guys are playing for the next shot, playing for a shot at the league. And we know what Iowa does in that realm, what Iowa does preparing guys for the next level, playing in the NFL. Kirk Ferentz is as good as anybody for that, coupled with the resources that they have, the connections that Kirk Ferentz has to the league. You're a guy that's coming in for a year. You're a stopgap guy. You're a one-year grad transfer, whatever it may be. Iowa is a great destination. Maybe the finances aren't going to match up, but it's also not talking about a guy's going to make $10,000 at Iowa and they're going to make 500,000 somewhere else. That's not what it is. Not even close. Iowa's going to be involved. Now, in order to make this work, need money in the Swarm. Need to continue to donate to the Swarm to make this work because Iowa has to go aggressive. There's a lot of position groups. We're going to talk about that a little bit more later in the week, but this appears real. Iowa is involved. And if it's not Miller Moss, they're going to continue to shop for a quarterback. There's a ton of them out there. Curtis Rourke, an easy example, what he did at Indiana. This was not one of the high-level transfers. There are plenty of guys that can upgrade the position at quarterback for Iowa, and they desperately need that going in to 2025. Kaleb Johnson is off to the NFL. He made that announcement on Sunday evening. Gonna miss Kaleb, obviously, what it was. No surprise that he's moving on. I think the guy that has, obviously, the best chance of having a great NFL career at the running back position in the Kirk Ferentz era. Now, it's not a real long list. Sean Green had a decent career, and that's really it when you're talking about Iowa running backs. But the way that he is built, the way that he plays, his style, his physicality, all the things that you're looking for in today's day and age at the position. He showed an ability, obviously, to catch the ball out of the backfield. There is so much to like about Kaleb Johnson. It's going to be fun watching him on Sundays going forward in the NFL. We continue here, Locked On Hawkeyes. Let's talk a little more about that Nebraska game. We'll get the perspective of Scott Dochterman from The Athletic. He was there at Kinnick Stadium. His thoughts on what he saw on Black Friday with the portal opening up and where the Hawkeyes go into a bowl game. We'll talk about that as we continue. This is Locked On Hawkeyes. Today's episode of Locked On Hawkeyes is brought to you by Game Time. We got hoops tonight, Iowa Northwestern. There's something special about watching basketball live, being there in the atmosphere. We'll see what the crowd's going to be like, but you can be there making a difference in the game, and you can do it with the Game Time app. Game Time has a new feature called Game Time Picks that makes getting tickets to see your favorite teams play live even easier. Game Time Picks takes out the fluff, shows you only incredible deals on great seats, so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of different tickets. I love the Game Time app. I've used it a bunch of times. I've used it for baseball. I've used it for football. I've used it for basketball. Whatever your sport is, wherever you're looking for tickets, they got you covered. And not just tickets to sporting events. They can do theater tickets. They can do music tickets, whatever you're looking for. Check out the Game Time app. My favorite part of the Game Time app is the all-in pricing. Toggling the feature up front shows you what the total's going to be. No more surprise fees at checkout. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time picks. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONCollege. LOCKEDONCOLLEGE for $20 off. Download Game Time today. What time is it? Game time.
Dochterman joins the program. He writes for The Athletic, covers college football. Kinnick, Jack Trice double dip this weekend. Doc, Trent, and Ken, thank you for coming on. Great weekend of college football all over the college football map. We had a couple of pretty good ones here in our state, did we not?
Absolutely. I mean, both games were highly competitive against rivalry opponents, and and for the locals, it was a great weekend. I mean, 2 wins. Iowa State, a historic win. I mean, I think we saw a spectacular season, career-defining play by maybe one of the best players in the country in Iowa City, and then of course the ending, which is reminiscent of so many others between Iowa and Nebraska. So I think, in these borders, not to the west and not to the southwest, I think it was a great weekend.
No doubt. Doc, do you get the sense, as Trent and I both do, this is starting to become a real hate rivalry? I mean, I love it. I think it's great. I wasn't sure it was going to get to this level, but it's here, isn't it?
It's here. Yeah, absolutely it is. And it's been brewing for a while. And I compare, like, the first time they played in 2011 in Lincoln, I felt like it was it was like flat champagne. Like, we're here. Everybody's here. We've got people all over the place trying to make it something that it really isn't. It has to be organic. Mm-hmm. And I think year after year after year, it's getting closer to that. And I always said that you've got to take something away from somebody when they really, really want it for it to really matter. But in this case, I think it's just Iowa wins every year, and the Nebraska players are tired of it. And Iowa is not shy about gloating. And, for fans who always think that Iowa's so stoic, they're not. And they certainly are not in this one. So I would put it on par with the ferocity with Iowa State. And I would say that it is certainly in that 4-game trophy window where it's among Iowa's biggest games.
8-4, not the season that many people anticipated, right where the win total was. If you got it early, 7.5, and you hit that over, you're happy about that one. But that aside, it was a disappointing year with a lot on there for a lot of different people. But there were certainly some trials and tribulations. Quarterback never was able to get figured out. The run game was outstanding. As you look back upon this season, regular season only, the bowl game will be kind of its own one. But as you look back at the 8-4, how would you grade this one out for the Hawkeyes?
Probably in like the B- territory. I think early on that the expectation was you looked at the schedule and you thought that this team had a chance to go to the playoff. I certainly did, but things had to go right. And last year, everything went right for them to go 10-2. This year, they didn't go right. They went 8-4, which isn't horrible. I mean, they're one of only 5 teams in the country in Power 5 to win 8 or more games in every season over the last 10 years, except for the COVID year. But that record is pretty comparable to an 8-win season. So I think that's overall it's good. It's not great. It's disappointing in that you had higher expectations, but when you look at it for what it is and what's happened, I don't think it's the worst season that they could have had. I think they could have lost Friday. They could have lost another game, and then all of a sudden they're 6-6, and that's not very good at all. So, you take it for what it is. Not the best season they've ever had. Certainly not the worst. And considering everything with quarterback, I think overall it was an okay season.
Which is why I'm guessing that you feel that Tim Lester probably his report card is maybe a little bit higher than the rest of the team. I thought he I'm not saying he made chicken salad out of chicken, because there's more than that. Obviously, you got Kaleb Johnson behind your quarterback, whoever that is. But I thought Tim Lester did a really nice job with the cards that he was dealt.
Yeah, for sure. I think he was as high graded as any assistant, maybe along with George Barnett, who was much maligned going into this year.
He was.
I think both of those two were probably the best two coaches, or their performances indicated that. I mean, with Tim Lester in particular, everybody knows how bad they were last year, and to get dealt, here are your quarterbacks. You didn't pick any of them, and then you got to try to make it work. And the starter, turned out to be, not real good, and had some issues there on the side. And then, then your other guy who's probably fit your offense, has a high ankle sprain. This is your last two games, and you still win them, and you win them with a walk-on quarterback who's rarely played any kind of football, and you've got to give him his pluses. And then on the other side, you've got the way they ran the ball was really as good as it's been in a long time, because the offensive line grew, it got better, but also that he tweaked the scheme. And that really enabled Kaleb Johnson to do what he was able to do. I mean, the way they decided to run a little bit more of a mid zone instead of an outside zone. And that enabled the linemen to get to linebackers, their reach and everything wasn't quite as severe as it once was. Their aiming points were closer. And then Kaleb Johnson could just hit it, and you could see he has every single skill set that you want in a running back.
Portal season is upon us. LaShawn Williams, former Hawkeye running back's already been committed now to two schools. Memphis last week, flipped it to Kansas today. The Iowa front, quarterback, offensive line, defensive line, linebacker, are those the need A's that we're
just
looking
at?
Cornerback, maybe you can throw that one in there too. The portal shopping is going to be heavy, it feels like, for this Hawkeye team. How do you see it, Doc?
Yeah, I think it has to be, because you're just missing so many pieces. And they're going to have to tweak the scheme a little bit too. I mean, defensive back is going to be really interesting to see what they try to do. Do they feel like they have a shutdown corner among the three or four that have played this year there and are coming back, or do they feel like, no, we need to go get somebody else? And they have been looking. They have been having some official visits, even on the JUCO front and what have you. So, that's going to be intriguing what they do at defensive back. But I think quarterback, to me, is you got to go get your guy. And I'm not saying, Brendan Sullivan could be that, but I don't think you win championships right there. I think you might have to go, if you're looking at championships, meaning get to the playoff and have a team capable of getting to the playoff, you probably need an upgrade there. And so how they handle the portal after, because of all the downside of recruiting all these years, is really going to be the determining factor in what looks to be a very daunting schedule next year, and whether or not Iowa is decent, good, or competitive for the upper levels. So quarterback is an essential part of it. Offensive line, I think they got a chance to have maybe another guy back. I think Logan Jones has a potential for another year, and that might happen. But I think they still need to really evaluate, do they have 5 pieces, 6, 7 pieces on their roster, or do they need to go out and get one? And I think they do. I think they probably need to look at tackle, unless they've got one that they feel like is going to get there next year.
Dane Brugler from The Athletic, he's your NFL draft guy, and I think he's really good. I really do. I think that of all the mockers out there, I think I put him in the upper tier. I really would, and I have since he got over there. When it comes to Kaleb Johnson, I thought he was really honest that, not a lot of buzz around this guy prior to the year, but he's got him now as a second round pick with a chance. I mean, somebody falls in love with him in the 20s, mid 20s, up into the early 30s. Obviously it only goes to 32, but there's a chance he could sneak into that first round, according to Brugler. Yeah,
that's true. He had him at, I want to say 38 or 39, just a week or two ago when he was going through his top 50. And that's right on. He is a bona fide number one running back at the next level. I mean, you ask the Dallas Cowboys if they like Kaleb Johnson or what Ezekiel Elliott is today.
Yeah.
It's a no-brainer. And yeah, obviously I could see somebody, whether they trade up or they trade down, and all of a sudden it's like, well, this is a guy who can plug, because at running back you've got to plug and play. There's no waiting like Lucas Van Ness at the Packers. They're seemingly waiting forever for him to start for some reason. But with him, it's Kaleb. It's plug, play, start right away. And I think that's whether it's Dallas or another team, Chicago could use a player like that when their new coach comes aboard. And I think this is it's the right time for him to do what he's doing, no question.
Doc, I'll ask you for the first time this week. I'm sure you'll hear it 1,000 times. Where's Iowa going for the bowl game?
Coin flip right now. If I was to wager any money, which I will not do because this is a fluid situation, especially today, Nashville is probably the number one, with Tampa very, very close. It's one or the other at this point. And part of it is what Michigan was able to do the other day and upset Ohio State, go 7-5. It puts them in the market with Iowa for Tampa. And then, with the ReliaQuest Bowl, you got to figure out, having Michigan against an SEC opponent, that's very favorable for TV and somewhat for the stadium. I think Iowa would probably bring more fans of Michigan this year, but still, you can't rule out what TV means to these teams and these bowl games. So I would probably lean towards Nashville just slightly. But the opponents, and I'm going through the bowl projections, and I've talked to several bowl scouts today and yesterday, and it looks to me, I think it's a coin flip between South Carolina and Ole Miss in those two bowls as well. So I think you're going to get one or the other. So you're going to get a very, very good team if you play one of those two, unless somebody moves up. Unless Alabama gets into the playoff, then teams might slide up. Then it might be a Missouri, for instance, in Nashville.
Got Dochterman from The Athletic as he joins us talking Iowa football. Portal season is here. And, of course, bowl destination. Music City Bowl, Nashville, not too shabby. Now, the opponent, we'll see how that looks. But we will continue to talk about that here in the coming days and weeks on Locked On Hawkeyes. We continue Locked On Hawkeyes. Time to talk some hoops. Iowa basketball back on the hardwood tonight. Back in Carver. And just a huge matchup for this program. If they're going to be an NCAA tournament team, these are the games you're going to have to win. Iowa, though, is going to be without one of their important pieces. We'll talk about that and preview the matchup against Northwestern. This is Locked On Hawkeyes. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook. Get ready to tackle all the NFL action with FanDuel. It's America's #1 sportsbook, because right now new customers can bet $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if you win. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets on the NFL all in one place. So in the middle of the game, you're sitting there, you say, I got a feeling here. You can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. You'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet with FanDuel and FanDuel.com. Not just NFL, they got you covered. College football, obviously championship weekend is here. College basketball, taking a look at the Hawkeyes tonight. They're a 5-point favorite at home against Northwestern, and a whole lot more all there. FanDuel.com to get started today. Never waste a hunch and make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. Trent Condon back with you one final time. This is Locked On Hawkeyes, and as always, thanks for making Locked On Hawkeyes your first listen every day. All right, let's wrap things up with some basketball talk. Iowa against Northwestern. The matchup, it's Northwestern at home, right? Feel like you should win. Northwestern's decent, off to a decent start this year. They've been certainly much better historically than what we're used to. Made the tournament the last 2 years under Chris Collins. He got him there a few years before that for the first time in program history. He's made this program relevant, competitive, solid, and that's what they are again this year. 2 losses this year. They come to Butler. Patrick McCaffrey was able to get them last weekend of their holiday tournament, and a win against UNLV then after that. The other loss came earlier this season on the road at Dayton. It's a really good Dayton team. Northwestern's got some names you'll remember. Barnheiser back for another season. He is very efficient, guy that just can beat you in a myriad of different ways, inside, outside. He is a problem. This team also has Ty Berry back, and we know what he is running that guard position. Nicholson in the middle. So those are some of the names that you certainly will know. You look at the team and the way that they're built. They're built solidly defensively. This is 33rd in the country in defensive efficiency, 106 in offensive efficiency. So nothing that jumps off the page by any means. But the big news, I believe, is Iowa and what's going to happen potentially with Seydou Traore. We saw that awful ankle turn a week ago in the last time the Hawkeyes were out on the hardwood. And at that time, that thing looked to be pretty significant. Now, Ray McCaffrey yesterday called it a game time decision. We'll see what game time decision, how close he's going to be to going. I think it gives you at least some hope that if he isn't able to go tonight against Northwestern, that'll be able to be out there on Saturday against Michigan. But I talk about the importance of this game just because Iowa so many times has dug themselves a hole. Since the Big Ten started these early Big Ten games, these ones late November, early December, trying to get a couple of games just because of the length of the schedule, Iowa's been awful. They're 2-11 in these matchups in the Fran McCaffrey era. And the 2-11 on itself is just pretty terrible. And then you dig a little bit deeper, there's some ugly loss. Drilled a year ago by Purdue on the road. Just looked awful in that game. Lost at home to a bad Michigan team a year ago. That Michigan team went 3-17 in the Big Ten. One of those 3 wins came at Carver. Year before that, they lose to Wisconsin. That was, okay, lost to Wisconsin. You're thinking, what's the big deal? Iowa always loses to Wisconsin. Well, that was probably the second worst Wisconsin team of the last 25 years. They also dug themselves a hole, started 0-3 that year. The year before that, they lose at Illinois and against Purdue in those 2 matchups. The 2021 season, that was that weird year, but they also lost that year to a bad Minnesota team. You look at these, it's not just the losses, it's who they're losing to. And I think this is another one. Northwestern might be a bubble team. It's going to be, as we're going to talk a lot this winter about these teams and the gap. I think there's going to be so many teams that are just in the middle, somewhere between 9-11 and 11-9 in Big Ten play. These are the matchups that are going to be important. I want to see tonight is what we've seen defensively from this Iowa basketball team. Is it real? Is there real change happening there? They have to be better on the boards. That has still been the bugaboo with this team and what they're doing in terms of rebounding. They have to be better rebounding the basketball. It's going to have to be a decided effort. Peyton Sanford's a pretty good rebounder, for his size and his athleticism. He's done pretty well, but need to get more inside. Owen Freeman needs to own the boards. I mean, that's what we need out of him as a guy that just patrols everything. And depending on who's playing the 4, if it's Laje DeBale, whoever else is in there, you need that. Cooper Koch is not going to be able to go. Sounds like a pretty significant shoulder injury to him. He's going to be out for a while. So there's another component that you're not going to have. And we know Cooper, what just a great looking shot he's going to have. He's going to knock down a bunch of threes in his career. Not going to be having any of them, at least here in the next few weeks, it appears at minimum. No reporting on that, just some buzz on that front. But that's what we have going on. Traore, I think it'd be incredibly important to have him out there. Ty Berry, you can get him going sometimes a little bit too fast, and that Iowa pressure defense can be ramped up. We'll see the point guard position. Brock Harding comes off a great performance. What he's going to do, certainly against a big upgrade at the point guard position, and more importantly, what he does on the defensive end against somebody like Ty Berry. Should be a fun one tonight. 6 o'clock tip-off at Carver Hawkeye Arena. Peacock with the coverage, and frustrating for me as I begin my high school basketball coverage tonight for my real job. My full-time job, and going to be doing that one for MediaCom. Well, I'll get back from Ankeny tonight, I don't know, 10:30, something like that. Flip on the game, and on Peacock, it's not as easy to fast forward. Look, I'm getting old, right? Getting old, and I just like the old days where I could DVR things and use my fast forward, and it worked a lot better. You can still fast forward on Peacock, I get it. It's not the same. We'll get through it, and we'll have an instant reaction podcast for you in your feed tomorrow morning. Thanks for being with us here today and making Locked On Hawkeyes your first listen every day. And not just Locked On Hawkeyes. Whatever your favorite team is, we have you covered. From the NFL to MLB. Hot stove coming upon us. They got you covered there. The NBA in full swing. NHL. Locked On Big Ten. Craig Sheeman doing great work talking all things Big Ten. Locked On college basketball. Locked On college football. Locked On fantasy football. Yeah, it's all there on the Locked On Network. Your team every day. That's what we do here. Thanks for being with us. We'll talk to you again after, hopefully, an Iowa win. Go Hawks.